Earth had entered a new era, a leap into the stars. From the quiet hum of terraformed fields to the bustling energy of orbital stations, humanity had established a foothold across the galaxy. Colonies, once a dream, now dotted distant planets. Their vibrant cities, a testament to the species' ingenuity. Massive starships glistening in the endless black streaked across the heavens, each one a symbol of human progress. But amidst this vast expanse, a chilling undercurrent of disdain flowed. Humanity, young and brash, was viewed by the ancient, alien factions with suspicion, even contempt. Their history was short, their technology unrefined compared to the powerhouses that had dominated the cosmos for millennia. The other species watched, calculating, waiting for the inevitable mistake that would prove humanity's fragility. But Earth, with all its energy and ambition, was determined to prove them wrong. The galaxy was becoming a chessboard, with Earth's influence growing. Yet every move came at a price. Maintaining peace between a rapidly expanding human population and a diverse array of alien species was proving to be more difficult by the day. Tensions simmered. Some species saw humanity's rise as a threat, an unpredictable force in a carefully balanced universe. Others, however, quietly welcomed humanity's presence, their curiosity about the new players outweighing their fears. Elena Vasquez, the captain of the starship Aurora, knew this more than anyone. She had seen it firsthand, how fear turned to mistrust and mistrust to hostility. The delicate balance between progress and resistance was something she navigated daily, always aware that one wrong move could shatter the fragile peace they had fought so hard to maintain. Captain Elena Vasquez, a name now whispered in both awe and fear across the stars, had once been a child of hardship. Born in the slums of a crowded Earth city, she fought for every scrap she had, rising through the ranks not because of favoritism, but because of sheer determination. Now, in her late 30s, Elena had earned her place as the battle-hardened leader of humanity's most prestigious fleet. The Aurora wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol. Under her command, humanity's first diplomatic mission into deep space had begun, and it was her crew that would forge alliances with alien civilizations and represent Earth in the vast, unknown galaxy. Her reputation as a strategist and a fierce leader had grown, but the weight of her role was never lost on her. Despite her hardened exterior, Elena had never fully accepted her place as a hero. She had made difficult decisions in the past. Some she regretted, but her drive had always been to protect those she swore to lead. Her crew, a unique blend of humans from various Earth nations and species from distant planets, followed her. Without question, they had a common goal: peace. Together, they were Earth's emissaries, the best of humanity, setting forth to foster goodwill among the stars. They visited distant colonies, provided aid to struggling worlds, and helped to broker delicate peace treaties. But peace, like everything else in the galaxy, was fragile. The deeper humanity ventured into the stars, the more whispers of fear began to surface. As human influence expanded, so did the unease among the older established powers. The Zathal Empire, one of the galaxy's most formidable civilizations, grew especially wary. To them, humans were an anomaly, a dangerous, unpredictable force that had to be contained before they could spread their influence further. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, leaders plotted, their calculations already factoring in the one thing they all feared: humanity's ability to adapt and grow at a pace no one had anticipated. The balance had begun to tip. Then the attack came. The mission, meant to offer peace, was shattered in an instant. Elena and her crew had been sent to one of humanity's most recently established colonies to monitor the fragile peace between human settlers and an alien race struggling to survive on a dying world. The Aurora was supposed to be a symbol of trust, a beacon of hope, but in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A sudden, brutal assault on the colony caught them off guard. The human fleet, unprepared for the scale of the attack, was ambushed. Chaos erupted. Systems failed. Communications were severed. This wasn't a random raid. This was calculated. In the midst of the chaos, Elena's mind raced. Who could have orchestrated this? It didn't take long for the answer to become clear. The Zarthal Empire, the same empire that had watched humanity's rise with disdain, had made its move. A cold, calculating empire with vast fleets and technologies far beyond anything humans had developed, the Zarthal had decided humanity's presence in the galaxy had become too great a threat. Their leaders had miscalculated, underestimating humanity's resilience, but they weren't about to make that mistake again. The war, one they had feared, had begun. For Elena, the weight of the conflict hit hard. The mission, meant to bring peace, had now ignited a war that threatened humanity's survival. The Zarthal Empire was not a foe they could defeat with brute force alone. Their fleets were vast, their technology advanced. Humanity's weapons, though evolving, were still in their infancy. Yet Elena knew one thing. Humanity had never been defeated by size, strength, or advanced technology. Humanity had survived because of its adaptability, its cunning, and its relentless drive to survive. Now, it was time to prove it once more. The Zarthal Empire was a shadow on the horizon, growing ever closer. Humanity, proud in its technological progress and hunger for exploration, now found itself standing in the face of overwhelming power. The Aurora and her fleet, humanity's pride, were outgunned before the first shot was even fired. The ships, built for exploration, had barely begun to develop military-grade weaponry. Against the mighty warships of the Zarthal, sleek and formidable, humanity's craft seemed like children's toys. The vast difference in scale was staggering. Where the Zarthal commanded thousands of battle-hardened ships, humanity's fledgling fleet barely numbered in the dozens. Elena Vasquez watched the space around her, the void where just hours ago the stars seemed to promise safety and new discoveries. Now they were filled with the cold, calculated advance of Zarthal warships. There was no diplomacy, no time for negotiations. The Zarthal were not here for peace. Panic began to spread throughout the ranks. The shock of encountering such a force was too much for some of the crew to handle, yet there was no time for hesitation. Elena steeled herself, her face hardening as the weight of responsibility pressed against her. The battle was not in their favor, and humanity's only option was retreat. Orders were shouted, chaos surged, and the human fleet was forced into action. Ships were hastily maneuvered, many already crippled by the first wave of enemy fire, but the human spirit was resilient. The once confident explorers were now fleeing for survival. The Zarthal gave chase, their weaponry tearing through the void, reducing human outposts and colonies to ashes in their wake. It felt as though the galaxy had grown impossibly small. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was now in the hands of fate. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching as the reality of the war she had hoped to prevent unfolded before her. Her breath came short, her heart heavy. The call came through. Earth was the next target. The Zarthal were coming for the home they had left behind, her world, her people. Elena could feel the weight of the moment crushing her. This wasn't just another diplomatic failure. This was the beginning of the end for humanity if she couldn't find a way to turn the tide. The thoughts rushed through her mind. She could retreat, save her people, secure the future of the human race elsewhere, but Earth would fall. Humanity's birthplace would be lost forever. Or she could fight, stand against an empire that had crushed civilizations older than any human history. What choice did she have? To retreat would be to abandon her home, to let it burn. To fight would mean risking everything, her life, her crew, the future of her species. Every person on board Aurora was watching her, waiting for direction. Eleanor could feel their eyes on her, the burden of command pressing down on her every decision. She felt it in her chest, in her gut. The weight of leadership had never been heavier. The responsibility of every life, every decision, every sacrifice rested with her. She took a long breath, steadying herself. There was no room for hesitation. If there was a chance to save Earth, they had to take it, no matter the cost. Her mind raced. The galaxy wasn't a friendly place, and the delicate balance they had maintained was shattered. She turned to her crew, issuing orders to gather forces. They would need allies, any strength they could muster. A few species, those with no love for the Zarthal, might stand with them. But time was running out. The Auric, a species known for their strategic minds, offered assistance. Their leaders swore to stand beside humanity. The hope surged within Elena's chest. An alliance was within reach. She called a meeting, discussing tactics and plans, the weight of every word heavy on her shoulders. But as she spoke with Auric representatives, something didn't sit right. Their promises were too perfect. Their ships arriving just when needed were too timely. Elena's instincts screamed at her. There was something wrong, something hidden beneath their smile. The betrayal came quickly. The secret dealings of the Auric were uncovered, hidden pacts with the Zarthal, promises of political favors in exchange for aiding the alien empire. The truth tore through Elena like a blade. The last thread of trust she had clung to had snapped. The wreckage of humanity's position became even clearer. No allies, no hope. Humanity was truly alone. Tensions flared within the crew. Some members fought to push forward despite the odds. Others, disillusioned by the betrayal, wanted to abandon the fight. Elena had never felt more alone in her leadership. Her mind raced, seeking a solution, any way to keep them together. She needed to remind them why they were fighting. She needed to reignite that spark of hope in their hearts before it went out. The crew began to assemble what little they had left. Civilian ships, hastily refitted for combat. The Aurora was far from prepared for war, but they had no choice. They had to fight. They would face the Zarthal head-on, with no reinforcements, no guarantees, just their wits, their courage, and their will to survive. The first skirmish was chaotic. Human ships, smaller and less powerful, darted around Zarthal fleets like ants swarming a predator. Elena's heart pounded as the battle unfolded. She watched as the crew followed her orders, improvising, adapting, making every shot count. The Zarthal were overwhelming, their technology far beyond what humanity had. But humanity had something the Zarthal couldn't predict: creativity. The humans adapted quickly, using guerrilla tactics, leveraging their agility in ways the larger, slower Zarthal warships couldn't follow. Elena stood in the command seat, watching the battle unfold. Every decision now carried the weight of life or death. Every sacrifice, every risk was necessary. The crew fought valiantly, each person giving their all, knowing that this fight was for humanity's very survival. As she gave the final order, she could only hope that their gamble would pay off, that this victory, no matter how small, would ignite the spark of rebellion across the galaxy. Every moment counted now. But as the dust began to settle and the first battle ended, Elena's face betrayed the exhaustion she felt. Their success had been hard won, but this was just the beginning. The war was far from over. The true test of humanity's resilience had only just begun. Each new move, each new battle could be their last. Yet in her heart, Elena knew one thing: humanity's ability to adapt, to survive, to fight when all seemed lost, was unmatched. And no matter what came next, they would never back down. The human fleet was nothing more than a fragile thread in the vast sea of stars when it first encountered the might of the Zarthal. The enemy's ships, sleek and monstrous, appeared like shadows from a nightmare. Humanity's vessels, designed for exploration, were pitifully unprepared for combat. The first clash was nothing short of disastrous. The Zarthal, with their advanced weaponry and unrelenting assault, tore through the human fleet with brutal efficiency. The Aurora, the flagship of humanity's peace efforts, was caught in the wave of destruction. Captain Elena Vasquez watched, in horror, as her crew fought valiantly, but the difference in power was too great. Her fleet had no chance against the onslaught of Zarthal warships. The humans were outclassed, their weapons barely scratching the surface of the enemy's mighty armor. The battle quickly shifted into a desperate defense. Every ship in the human fleet was either damaged or destroyed, their crew members doing their best to hold their ground. Panic spread through the ranks like wildfire. Elena, her mind working at lightning speed, saw the inevitable. Her fleet was too slow, too weak to win this fight head-on. There was only one option left. She ordered the fleet to retreat into the nearby asteroid field, hoping to use the terrain to their advantage. The idea was reckless, but it was humanity's last hope. As the ships darted into the maze of rocks, the Zarthal followed. There, vast warships unable to maneuver with the same precision as the human craft. For the first time in the battle, the Zarthal were caught off guard. Elena's quick thinking turned the tide, allowing her fleet to regroup and launch a guerrilla-style counterattack. The surprise was enough to force the Zarthal into a temporary retreat, though the battle had been costly. The humans had won, but barely. The victory was small, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, yet it was a victory nonetheless. It showed that humanity, even when outclassed, had the ingenuity and spirit to fight back. But the victory came at a heavy cost. As the Aurora limped back to a nearby station for repairs, the cracks within the human fleet began to show. The reality of war was setting in, and it was not a kind companion. Elena's leadership was being tested like never before. Her crew, once united by a common goal, was now fractured by fear, anger, and confusion. Some questioned whether they should continue fighting at all, their morale crushed by the weight of their losses. Others, bitter at the lack of preparation, turned their frustration toward the very leadership that had led them into this battle. And still, some were plagued by the belief that they had been abandoned by their own government, forced to fight a war they never asked for. Elena stood before her crew, hearing the voices of dissent rise like an angry storm. The unity that had once defined their mission was now crumbling, and Elena could feel the strain of it in her bones. It would have been easy to give up, to let the crew fall apart and retreat to safety, but she couldn't do that. She couldn't allow humanity to falter now, not after everything they had fought for. She stood tall, her voice steady as she addressed the crew. We've all lost something in this war. We've all felt the weight of what we're up against. But I know one thing for sure. We're not going to stop. Not now. Not ever. We'll face this together, or we won't face it at all. Her words rang out, a call to action, a reminder of the strength they had always carried deep inside them. Slowly, one by one, the crew members began to nod, their resolve reigniting. It wasn't enough to silence all the doubts, but it was enough to keep them moving forward. Elena wasn't just a captain now, she was a symbol of humanity's resilience. She had to be. In the midst of this turmoil, an unlikely ally arrived, the Auric. The alien species had promised support, offering their ships and resources to assist humanity in the fight against the Zarthal. Elena had been hesitant, but she knew they needed help. The alliance, though fragile, seemed like a lifeline. However, as they prepared for their next move, Elena's instincts began to scream at her. Something was off. The Auric had been too perfect in their timing, too eager to help. Elena dug deeper, and the truth shattered her trust. The Auric had been secretly working with the Zarthal all along, sabotaging human efforts and feeding information to the enemy. The betrayal cut deep. They had played their cards well, pretending to support humanity while quietly working to weaken them from within. It was a blow to Elena's leadership, to her very core. She had trusted the Auric, had believed they were allies. But now their deceit threatened everything. The loss of critical resources, the setbacks, all of it had been orchestrated by the very people they had tried to rely on. The truth broke through the tension like a lightning strike. Elena knew she could trust no one but her crew. The galaxy had become a place where betrayal lurked around every corner, and humanity had to rely on its own ingenuity if they were going to survive. With the betrayal unraveling, Elena's mind sharpened. They had no allies, no one to turn to for help. It was time for humanity to fight back the only way they knew how, with resourcefulness and adaptability. They began to use unconventional tactics, hacking into the Zarthal's communication networks and turning the enemy's own technology against them. Elena spearheaded the reverse engineering of captured Zarthal weapons, transforming them into tools of resistance. The human fleet, small and outgunned, began to strike back in unexpected ways. Guerrilla tactics, small but targeted raids, became their new strategy. With every victory, no matter how small, they disrupted the Zarthal's operations. The once feeble human fleet was no longer just a group of survivors. They were becoming a symbol of rebellion. As their tactics evolved, the Zarthal Empire began to take notice. The human fleet's audacity, their relentless ability to adapt and overcome, sent ripples through the galaxy. The human resistance was no longer just a thorn in the Zarthal's side, it was a growing force. Elena saw the spark of rebellion igniting across the galaxy. It wasn't just the humans fighting anymore. They were inspiring others to rise against the Zarthal. The galaxy was beginning to turn, and humanity was at the center of it all. With every move, every battle, humanity proved that it was more than just an experiment in survival. It was a force of nature, a species that could not be easily crushed. The human spirit, unbroken, had become the very thing that the Zarthal had feared all along. And this was only the beginning. Elena's heart hammered in her chest as the final decision loomed. Their mission was simple but suicidal. Strike at the heart of the Zarthal Empire, destroy their command center, cripple their control, and send the Empire into disarray. The plan had no room for error, no margin for failure. The Aurora and its fleet had been devastated. They were facing a foe far more powerful, and this mission, though the only hope, was one that had no guarantees. The very fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and with every passing second, the weight of that responsibility pressed harder on her mind. Elena, standing on the command deck, could feel the eyes of every single crew member on her. The calm before the storm was palpable, and the tension was thick, every moment heavy with the knowledge that most of them might not make it out alive. They were preparing to infiltrate the very heart of the Zarthal stronghold, a place guarded, like a vault, fortified by unimaginable defenses and countless enemies. A suicide run, one that would either change the course of history or end in a quiet, tragic failure. As Eleanor prepared for the mission, she glanced around the command room. Many of her crew members were volunteering to stay behind. They would hold off the Zarthal reinforcements, buying precious time for the infiltration team. Their sacrifice would be the difference between success and failure. Each volunteer understood the cost, and there was no hesitation in their eyes. In this moment, there were no doubts. The fear was there, but the courage outweighed it. They knew what they were walking into. Yet, every soul on board the Aurora knew that their fight wasn't just about survival, it was about something far more important, the future of humanity. Elena nodded to each volunteer, her eyes sharp with a mix of respect and sorrow. She couldn't promise them success, but she could promise that their sacrifices would not be forgotten. The team began their journey toward the Zarthal capital. Their path was fraught with peril, the very space around them a constant threat. As they moved closer to their target, the alien terrain became more hostile, the unknown more oppressive. The sky ahead was marred by debris from past conflicts, and the stars seemed distant, cold, as though they too doubted the success of this mission. Elena led the team, each step taking them closer to the heart of the beast, knowing full well that once they breached the capital, there would be no turning back. The silence within the ship was overwhelming, as each crew member braced themselves for the unknown. Every corner of the ship felt heavy with the burden of the task ahead. But Elena wasn't a leader because of her fear. She was a leader because of her ability to push through it. Her mind raced, calculating every potential outcome. Would they make it in time? Would they be able to infiltrate the heart of Zarthalis's empire and cripple it before they were crushed under the weight of the Zarthal forces? There was no way to be sure, but that's what being human meant. It meant acting, no matter the odds, and trusting in the creativity, the adaptability that had brought them this far. With a single nod, she gave the order. Full speed ahead. We do this for Earth, for all of us. As they neared the Zarthal capital, the atmosphere grew tense. The enemy was everywhere, the pressure of their pursuit relentless. In that moment, Elena's resolve was tested as the realization hit her that the only way forward was through overwhelming odds, with no more tricks to fall back on. There would be no reinforcements, no more surprises. They had to succeed, whatever the cost. The Zarthal forces moved closer. Elena's breath caught in her throat as their colossal ships loomed larger. This was it, the final confrontation. She turned to her team, eyes fierce. Stay sharp. We get in, do what we have to, and get out. No heroics. We make history, or we die trying. Inside the heart of the Zarthal Empire, Elena stood face to face with Zarthalis himself, the Emperor, the source of the Empire's terror. It was a standoff, one that would either define humanity's fate or seal its doom. The alien emperor stood tall, exuding an air of invulnerability. His power radiated through the room. Elena felt it pressing in on her, but she refused to let it break her. She had been through too much. "You're not invincible," Elena said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "This ends here. Your empire's reign is over." Zarthalis sneered, dismissing her defiance. "You are but an insect in the grand design," he hissed, his voice cold. But Elena, a diplomat at heart, knew that there was something deeper, something hidden within the political fracture lines of the Zarthal Empire. She had studied their history, their politics, and she understood that even the mightiest of empires could be fractured by internal strife. Using every bit of knowledge, Elena played on the fissures between Zarthalis and his rivals, manipulating the situation carefully. The battle that would have torn the galaxy apart was now poised to collapse from within. Just as the tension seemed ready to explode into all-out war, it happened. Zarthalis, the once mighty ruler, was betrayed by his own. Key members of his own leadership, sensing an opportunity, turned against him. It was a revelation that stunned everyone. Zarthalis was no longer the undisputed emperor. The cracks in his empire, built on years of fear and control, had finally fractured. The very leaders that had stood by his side turned, and in an instant, the empire began to unravel. The shock of the betrayal sent ripples throughout the room, and Elena could barely contain her disbelief. What had seemed like the end for humanity had, in a single moment, become a victory. The might of the Zarthal was collapsing from within. Humanity had done it. They had survived. But it wasn't just their survival. Humanity had been the catalyst for the Empire's downfall. Zarthalis, now overthrown, was left in the ruins of his once great empire. Elena and her team stood victorious. Though their faces were drawn with exhaustion, the war was not over, but they had won the impossible. The human fleet, battered and bruised, had shattered the very foundation of the Zathal Empire, proving to the galaxy that humanity was not just a survivor, it was a force to be reckoned with. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity, now recognized as a new power in the galaxy, had proven its place among the stars. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. They had taken the first step into a new era, and whatever came next, humanity would face it together, unyielding. The galaxy had been torn asunder by the conflict, its once serene expanse now scarred by the remnants of war. The mighty Zathal Empire, which had loomed over the cosmos with an iron grip, lay shattered and broken. Its vast fleets, its seemingly endless power, had crumbled beneath the weight of human ingenuity and tenacity. But the victory came at an immense cost. The battlefields were littered with the debris of both human and Zathal ships, the quiet aftermath, a grim reminder of the sacrifices made. Humanity, once dismissed as weak and fragile, had proven to be a force of resilience that even the greatest empires could not ignore. Yet despite the triumph, there was no real celebration. The toll of the war had been heavy, Earth had nearly fallen, countless lives had been lost, and the damage done to the galaxy was not easily repaired. Still, as the dust of battle began to settle, the realization began to sink in. Humanity had not only survived, but had conquered. They had earned their place among the stars. Captain Elena Vasquez, her face weary and worn, stood on the command deck of the Aurora as the ship approached. Earth, the once familiar blue planet, looked peaceful from a distance, but Elena knew better. The scars of war had left their mark on every corner of human civilization. Yet as the fleet descended into Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected greeted them: hope. As the Aurora landed, a vast crowd gathered, cheering as they saw the human fleet return victorious. Elena stepped out of the ship to the deafening applause of her crew, their faces alight with pride. For a brief moment it felt like a dream, one that had once seemed impossible. Earth had survived, the threat was over. But as Elena gazed at the cheering crowd, she couldn't shake the weight of the war's cost. The faces of the fallen, those who hadn't made it, lingered in her mind. They were the real heroes, and their sacrifice would forever hang in the balance. The people of Earth saw something different in their returning heroes. No longer were humans the fragile, insignificant species they once appeared to be. The defeat of the Zathal Empire had shifted the balance of power across the galaxy, and humanity had emerged from the shadows to take its rightful place as a dominant force. No longer seen as a mere experiment in survival, humanity had become a symbol of resilience. As the celebrations continued, Elena stood in silence, reflecting on what it meant to carry the title of hero. To her, it was not about the accolades, but about the future that now awaited them. Earth, once a planet that had fought to survive, now had the opportunity to shape the galaxy in its image. Yet, even as humans were now seen as a force to be reckoned with, Elena knew that this was only the beginning. New challenges, new threats would rise to challenge humanity's newfound power. The universe was vast, and the shadows of old enemies still lingered in the dark corners of space. In the quiet of her quarters, Elena's mind churned. Despite the cheers, despite the victory, she could not escape the weight of the cost. The faces of the crew members who had volunteered to stay behind, to give their lives for this cause, haunted her. The empty seats at the table, the names carved into memorials, reminded her of the true cost of victory. Had it been worth it? The question gnawed at her, and she couldn't find the answer. What had they truly gained? The Zathal Empire was gone, yes, but the galaxy had changed forever. The peace they had fought for now felt uncertain. Every decision, Every life lost was a part of the equation, and Elena knew that no amount of glory could ever erase the sacrifices that had been made. Her mind turned to the lessons learned from the war. Humanity, despite its technological inferiority, had shown the galaxy what it was capable of. The ability to adapt, to think creatively in the face of overwhelming odds, had been their greatest weapon. Humans had not won through superior firepower or technology. They had won by using their resourcefulness, by finding ways to outsmart the seemingly invincible. That, Elena realized, was the true heart of humanity. Their strength lay not in their power, but in their ability to survive, to keep pushing forward no matter the obstacles in their path. The victory over the Zathal was not just about the end of a war, it was about the beginning of something new, something far greater. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's resilience, and now they would have to reckon with it. Yet, as Elena stared out at the horizon, she knew that the peace they had won was fragile. The fall of the Zathal had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and it wouldn't be long before new threats emerged. The other alien species, many of whom had feared the Zathal, would now see humanity not as a fledgling species, but as a rival to be watched closely, if not challenged outright. The victory had opened a door to new possibilities, but it had also opened a Pandora's box of new dangers. As the cheers on Earth grew louder, Elena's thoughts were already on the future. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's place in it was still uncertain. They had made it through one war, but who knew what lay ahead? Humanity had proven itself, but it would have to keep proving itself again and again. The journey was far from over, and Elena, as always, would be there, leading the charge. The streets of Earth were filled with crowds celebrating, but Elena stood at the edge, alone with her thoughts. She had seen the cost of victory, and she knew that it would stay with her forever. The echoes of the war, the faces of the fallen would never fade. But humanity had persevered, and in that perseverance there was a quiet strength. She glanced at the horizon, where the stars beckoned, knowing that their journey had just begun. No matter what came next, humanity would rise to meet it. They had proven they could adapt. They had proven they would never back down. The Earth, once a fragile haven teetering on the brink of extinction, had begun to heal. The damage from the war, though still visible in scarred landscapes and broken cities, was slowly being repaired. The hum of reconstruction was everywhere. Towering cranes stretched high into the sky. New cities rose from the ashes, and the atmosphere, once heavy with the weight of war, now held a palpable sense of optimism. The people of Earth had endured the impossible and emerged victorious. They celebrated their hard-earned peace with newfound hope, forming new alliances and rebuilding what had been destroyed. Yet as Elena Vasquez walked through the bustling streets, a strange unease gnawed at her. The earth beneath her feet was solid, but she could feel the instability of the galaxy stretching beyond their grasp. Earth may have been safe for now, but the universe was vast, its dangers far from conquered. The stars were still distant, cold and filled with unknown perils.